Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the OFN Today as we talk Carolina Panthers football with the managing editor of the Panthers Wire, Mr. Tim Weaver. Tim, good to have you back on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Tim, already you're frozen. So let's see if we can make this work, though. That's okay. I've got like a frozen. It's like having an actual image of you. You know, like those photos when you're not available on video and they take like a picture, a snapshot of someone. That's exactly what I have going on here. So actually, if you just talk and your camera gets like frozen there, it's actually not too bad. So I think it'll work out, Tim.
Okay.
I know you're doing your best, and I appreciate it very much. And the Carolina Panthers are also doing their very best to improve after a first season under a new head coach, bringing in a new quarterback. So before we move on to 2021 and, of course, the offseason before the season begins, which is the main reason we have you on the program, what was the story of the 2020 season? Was it as expected? Was it a disappointment? Was it a mild success?
I would say it was pretty much as expected. Devil is in the details, of course. I would say it kind of evened out in that the defense was a bit better than I expected and most people expected. Some people had them ranked as the worst defensive unit in the league going into the season, and they clearly weren't that bad. And also the offense wasn't quite as good as people were expecting. They have good receivers. You have a great 1-2-3. You obviously have a great running back. If they had Christian McCaffrey healthy the full season, obviously things could have been a little bit different. Yep. But still, it is just a running back. And at the end of the day, they don't have the ball in their hands as much as the quarterback. And Bridgewater just didn't quite live up to expectations. I think I predicted he could throw 30 touchdowns. I thought the opportunities were there for him. If he had been a little more aggressive, if he had just... I don't know. You can't change a quarterback's mentality, but I thought he could have thrown 30 touchdowns. I would say that. And he had some good games in there, especially the middle of the season, week 7 against the Saints and week 9 against the Chiefs. He was getting the ball out quick. He was making his reads, making the right decisions. And those were his 2 best games. But after that, it was pretty much all downhill. Maybe part of that was physical. Rule says that he was injured in the week 10 game against Tampa. I don't remember seeing anything in particular, so maybe that was part of it, but he just seemed to really lose his confidence from there, and it just went straight down. It was a straight line down, and he kind of bottomed out. The Green Bay game, I think, was where the schism really happened. Just before halftime, Bridgewater reaches over the goal line. This could have made it a one-score game just by a terrible first half for Carolina, and he just pretty much violated the cardinal sin and reached on first down and got the ball swatted away. It turns into a 13-point swing, just absolutely devastating. And at halftime, Matt Rule says, we don't reach over the goal line. He kind of like threw his quarterback out under the bus at halftime on national TV. You don't usually see that much. So you can tell how upset he was after that. And I think that the relationship there just never really recovered. You didn't hear a lot of praise from Rule after that. And especially in the offseason now, you haven't even gotten the usual, like, Teddy is our quarterback kind of nonsense you hear from a coach when, they're going to make a change. Sure. They've made it very clear that they're ready to move on. David Tepper was unequivocal in his comments. They didn't so much say Bridgewater was bad, but they made it clear they want an upgrade. Rule pretty much made that clear as well. So they're ready to do whatever it takes to upgrade there if they can.
Does that mean also trading Bridgewater, or Bridgewater will be content with being the understudy or the backup, basically?
They're trying to trade him. I guess they came very close to including him in the Matt Stafford deal that fell through. The Rams came through with a better offer at the last minute, obviously, but the report was they were very close. I guess they had Stafford's medicals on the way. I don't know if that's what point in the trade process that is, but it sounds like it was close. I don't know. And they're still trying to deal him. I guess the 49ers have called, and apparently other teams have too. I don't know who would really want to take him on given his contract and the year he just had, but they are actively trying to trade him, yeah.
All right. So, and would you be surprised if he was still on the roster, even if as a backup?
I would be surprised. It sounds like they're just kind of disgusted. He has $10 million guaranteed no matter what you do with him, so that's kind of a sunk cost. I wouldn't be shocked if they got him at this point. They're still kind of hoping they can get something for him. But I don't know. If you can get a fifth rounder, you take it. But lower than that, I don't know what the return is at this point. I wouldn't mind keeping him around as the backup, but it seems like the relationship has deteriorated to the point where that's unlikely. And he's unfollowed the team on Instagram. He set his account to private.
Wow.
So yeah, it seems
Okay.
like that's
He's gone
south there.
All right, we didn't even have to. It's not even like we don't have to read between the lines. I mean, we can just read over the lines. I mean, he's gone. He's not coming back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, as we move then into this season and this offseason, which is huge for the franchise with the 8th overall pick in the first round, is that a given that the Panthers will pick one of those early quarterbacks? And are they even going to be desperate enough where if those quarterbacks start coming up the board early to trade up as far and as high as maybe number 2?
If they don't have their quarterback at that point, then they absolutely will. I think they have to trade up to make sure they get one of those top 4 guys. But it sounds to me like they want a veteran, honestly. Like all their public comments, they're saying like it sounds like they want someone who's experienced. And they've been involved in all these QB talks. Obviously, Stafford, Deshaun Watson is the big name. I guess David Tepper is just obsessed with somehow landing Deshaun Watson. If you can convince the Texans to trade him, of course, yes, you do that. You sell the farm, give them as many first-round picks as they want. You do whatever you can do. But Russell Wilson is another possibility. He seems very unhappy with Seattle, and he has the connection with the new general manager. Dak Prescott, also probably unlikely. Those are like the 3 big names. Like maybe you can see them getting traded, but probably not. I also really like Gardner Minshew as a potential trade target. Like we know Jacksonville's going to take Trevor Lawrence. Therefore, we can probably safely assume Minshew's not going to be starting anytime soon. Yeah. He's got a very cheap contract. I think he's got a lot of potential. I like some of the advanced stats on him. I would like to take a chance on him for sure. But if they don't trade for a veteran, then yes, they're definitely taking a quarterback at number 8. And most likely moving up to make sure they get one of those top 4 guys.
Well, I mean, theoretically, they could also trade for Minshew and still take a quarterback at 8, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea at all. Like, you don't know what Minshew is going to be if he has a totally different situation. Obviously, the pieces aren't there in Jacksonville right now. He doesn't even have like a real number 1 wide receiver. I like what he's done with DJ Chark. I think he's pretty underrated, but nowhere near the receiving power that the Panthers have. He doesn't have a running back anywhere near McCaffrey's ability. I would really like to see him in Brady's offense as well. I think that would be a really interesting match there. But yeah, that wouldn't preclude you from taking a quarterback either, which is another good reason to do that. But if you take on a Russell Wilson contract or a Deshaun Watson contract, you don't really have room for a rookie as well, most likely.
Well, let's go down the line then. Christian McCaffrey, and I'm sure we talked about this the last time, and unfortunately it happened, and that was the injury, and really an injury-plagued season. This is what happens when you are on the field for 91% of the offensive snaps in 2018, 93% of the offensive snaps in 2019. You have that sort of monster season in 2019 when you had not only over 1,300 yards rushing, but also 116 receiving. Well, actually, you had 116 catches for 1,005 yards receiving. So it was just a monster season. He's not a big guy. When he does come back to start this season, the Panthers, whether it's Mike Davis or someone else, the Panthers have got to find a way to keep him off the field a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think you need to diversify the running back touches a little bit. Injuries are injuries. They're going to happen to everyone, especially running backs at some point. But he is still very young. He's like 24. I think he'll bounce back from that. I don't think he's going to become an injury-prone label kind of guy. And he's not as big as Derrick Henry or anything, but he's still built pretty well. He does his conditioning thing. I'm still pretty bullish about his future. But yeah, I would very much like to see them give another running back more touches. I would love to bring Mike Davis back if they can afford him. I would say he can probably make more being a starter with another team if he signs somewhere else in free agency. But if you can bring him back, absolutely you do. But if not, you have other options. You can draft someone on day 3. Running backs are a dime a dozen. It's not hard to find a backup running back, but I would definitely like to see them just like lighten his load a little bit, because you sunk a lot of money into him. That was probably not a great idea. I don't mind, you pay a running back, you pay someone what they're worth. He was at the time the best running back in the league, arguably still is when he's healthy. But they could have had him for so much cheaper if they picked up his 5th-year option. Yeah. You would have still controlled him for 2 more years at a very low price. Yeah. So that may have been one of the reasons why they let Marty Hurney go. That was just one of several head scratching. Just was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, there's no reason to do that. If he was threatening to hold out, that would be one thing, but we didn't hear anything like that. That probably would have gotten out. So yeah, it was just a bizarre timing thing. I don't mind paying McCaffrey at all. I think, players deserve what they can get, but didn't like the timing of that one at all.
Yeah, Hurney always seemed to be like almost too loyal to his players. Like he would constantly give these guys these great deals. And I was like, all right, that's nice that you have this relationship with the players, but come on. I mean, that's just not the way you build a team nowadays in the NFL. So he's not around anymore, like you said. Alex Arma, does he come back? I know fullbacks don't make a lot of money. He's a very good pass blocker. So is he going to be back?
I would bet yes. I mean, fullbacks aren't very expensive. It wouldn't be hard to bring him back, and they seem to like him. No matter who, I mean, he was Ron Rivera's guy, obviously, but they liked him enough to bring him back. I would be surprised if he isn't there. It gives you more options, obviously like the spread kind of offense, you're not going to see fullbacks a lot, but it just gives you more, multiplicity, what you can do, especially as they struggled in short yardage situations. They struggled in the red zone. So I wouldn't mind seeing him more involved in the offense next year for sure.
Yeah, because it was strange that he was used on 12% of the offensive snaps before the new staff came in town, and it was used for 14% last year. So that doesn't happen a lot, especially offenses change all the time. So the new offensive staff actually liked them or needed him just as much as the old ones. So we'll probably see him back. The tight end position is a disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, they just didn't get anything from Ian Thomas as far as receiving goes. Chris Mannert is an excellent blocker. He's just very underrated. Like, he's one of those guys, he just very much under the radar. Like, you need to be really watching the line of scrimmage to appreciate what he does, because he doesn't get any targets. He doesn't impact the game in any other way, but he's a great blocker. But neither of them are very good receivers. So that's a spot. I would just prefer them to go after a free agent there. I don't think you use an early pick on a tight end like Kyle Pitts. He's probably going to be a great player, but I don't like a top 10 pick on a tight end in this era. I just don't.
Not for a rebuilding team.
No, definitely not. Someone like Hunter Henry would be great. He's probably my favorite free agent target there. But if you're going to look a little bit cheaper, someone like Jared Cook would be good. He knows the scheme from the Saints. He's a great red zone weapon, great receiver the last few years. He really had a good third act to his career. He wasn't, he's pretty mediocre, average tight end. And then when he got to New Orleans, here's what he can do. So it's just funny how sometimes teams can unlock someone's potential like that. He's another one. Or Jonnu Smith, he's been very good for the Titans the last couple of years. I'd like to see him too. So that's one position I'd like to see them add somebody in free agency.
Curtis Samuel, is he gone?
Probably. It doesn't sound good based on the articles that they put out there. Darren Gant is now writing for the team. They make it seem like they can't afford him, which I don't know. I don't agree with that on principle. Like the Chiefs last year, middle of a pandemic, salary cap is plummeting. They gave Patrick Mahomes $500 million. They re-signed Chris Jones. They re-signed Travis Kelce. Teams are going to find a way to sign guys that they want at the end of the day. So I don't know if I buy it, but he's definitely not going to be easy to retain. If Hurney had extended him a year and a half ago, then it wouldn't be so much of a problem now. But now he had a really good year. He became your best guy on third down. He became a rushing threat. They finally figured out how to use him there, and now he's going to cash in. So I would be surprised if he does come back, but if they can figure out a way to maybe use the franchise tag on someone else, one of their offensive linemen, maybe there's enough. They did make a few good moves, so they have like 30 million cap space. There's probably enough to do it, but then it doesn't leave a whole lot for other positions. I would love to bring him back. I think you can never have too much talent at wide receiver. Like look who was in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the
Sure.
Buccaneers. They're both just absolutely loaded at wide receiver. You can never have too many of them.
And if you take, just looking at the Panthers, it's Anderson, Moore, and Samuel, and that's it. I mean, it's just like a huge drop off. So if Samuel goes, that becomes an instant need because all of a sudden you have one injury and you're in big trouble. So either you sign Samuel or I have to believe the wide receiver position / tight ends. That's going to be a big priority this offseason.
Yeah, they have to add another pass catcher, especially if you're going to lose Samuel, whether it's another team or, I would just prefer to keep Samuel. I don't know why it's that hard. Like, yes, it'll cost $16 million to franchise tag him, but receivers are so valuable outside of quarterback. That's probably the most important position right now, given the way the game is played. It's not 1978 where you're running the ball every time. You need great receivers and you need depth. You can't just have one guy. And when you have a solid 1, 2, 3, I think you try to keep them as much as you can.
Yeah, and Samuel, I was noticing, man, he had a 51% catch percentage in 2019. It went up to 79% last year, and he did it when his yards per target went to a career high 8.8. So that's actually the exact opposite. That shows you how great of a season he had last year, and it was overblown. Really, it was lost because of DJ Moore had his back-to-back 1,000-yard season. Robbie Anderson had a 1,000-yard season in his first year with the Panthers, and here's Curtis Samuel having his career year.
Yeah, I think that catch rate was actually the highest in the league for anyone with like 75 or more catches, something like that. So just extremely impressive all around. Like when you really dig into his stats, like, wow, yes, 1,000 yards on like the surface, that's very impressive. Like he didn't score that many touchdowns, but if you really dig into it, he had an amazing season and he earned a payday. Like if you can't pay a guy like that after the year that he just had, that sends a pretty bad message, in my opinion.
And Robbie Anderson, now he just signed a 2-year deal. So are they going to try to extend him this offseason?
I would love to extend him. I thought he had a great year. I thought, like, if you took any one of these guys and put them on another team, like, I don't know if they're the number one guy. They could be on some teams, but Anderson was magnificent early in the year. His numbers kind of tailed off later once Samuel started getting more targets and Mike Davis started getting more involved. But he's just very, very potent as a deep threat. I still think, like, his 9 route is as good as anyone in the leagues. Like, still extremely dangerous, but he also like showed he's not just that deep threat kind of guy like he was with the Jets. Yeah. They used him on crossing routes a lot. He showed like there's more to his game than just being the vertical guy. So that's another guy I think you could save, I don't know, like 4 or 5 million or something this year by extending him. He's worth keeping around. You just like when you have a good, strong receiver core, I think in this era, you have to do everything you can to keep it together, especially when it's young like this. It's not like Tampa, where Antonio Brown, who knows how much longer he's going to play, Gronk, that kind of thing. But these guys, you've got a good 1, 2, 3. You can keep them together for 3, 4 more years and have a really good passing offense.
All right, offensive line and the sack total against dropped from 58 to 36. So that's the good news. The bad news is that 4 of the 5 starters are unrestricted free agents. Leading the way is Moton, who was and really you have Moton at right tackle, Okung, who's been banged up. Is what is the deal with well, really Okung because of his injury situation? You gotta obviously let me know what the deal is there, but Moton has to be one of the main priorities, if not the top guy that the Panthers need to bring back, right?
Yeah, Moton is the number one priority, and I guess the reporting is if they can't work out a new deal in the next 2 weeks, they are going to franchise tag him. So Moton is staying, and that's a no-brainer. He's maybe the best right tackle in the league right now.
Does he stay at right tackle no matter what?
Yeah, he's a right tackle, and he's going to stay there. I thought he should have been a Pro Bowler. You had like 3 left tackles on the NFC team, which is nonsense. If you're going to, we're going to field an actual football team. Right? If you play the game, you're going to need a right tackle. Yes. So he should have been on that team, as well as Brian Burns, in my opinion. But you keep Moton, that's a no-brainer. Okung, Okung is probably the toughest one to call because of his injuries. That's not just this year. Last year, he missed a lot of time too, and he also had a pretty serious health thing. It was like a pulmonary embolism. Um, I don't know if you can keep him, but you can't just like dismiss it because you've had this hole at left tackle for 7 years now since Jordan Gross retired, and you tried like 10 or 11, 12 guys, and none of them have been able to stick. So I think you try to keep Okung maybe, but it depends on the price. Like if he's going to get 14, 15 million, like I don't think they can afford that. Um, but if it's somewhere down like 9, 10, 11 million based on his injuries, kind of like tanking
you
his
never know.
value a little bit, I'd be willing to do that. But you can't just dismiss letting him go out of hand. He's not a popular Panthers player.
Why is
His
that?
Twitter account, I think he's just, his opinions are a little problematic. His Twitter account is not very popular.
Okay.
And the injuries were made. Like if he had played really well, if he had played 16 games
Sure.
and played real well, they would have loved him. Like nobody would have cared like what his opinions are. But it was just a combination of things. Like they traded a popular player for him. Trey Turner was beloved here. He was a great guard. He's 5 years younger than him. I hated that trade from the beginning. I never thought that made any sense. So there's a combination of who they gave up for him and then being injured all year and having this bizarre opinion. So not a popular guy, but you can't just say, okay, we're going to start over at left tackle again. Like you can't just keep doing that. You need to find a solution there.
Because Greg Little's not the solution.
Apparently not. He may become a thing, but it's impossible to tell right now because he's missed so many games due to injuries. He's only played like 7 games or something since he was drafted 2 years ago. He's just like, it was concussions, and then it was his ankle, and then it was his knee, and then, and then he's missed too much time. So it's impossible to say what his ceiling is. Like maybe he'll be a good starter, but right now there's just no way to tell.
All right. And then the 2 guards, Miller, who was brought in on a cheap deal. I can't believe he's not going to be, I'm sure he's not going to be expensive. And then Chris Reed, he really, came on to give the Panthers a pretty solid season for a guy that not much was expected from. So you think both of those guys will be affordable and back?
I think so. I know that they want John Miller back as long as the price is reasonable, and I don't think either one would break the bank. I don't see why they would. The offensive line was pretty good. I don't know why this fan base just became obsessed with the offensive line. Maybe it was the way Super Bowl 50 happened. They just saw Mike Remmers getting beat over and over and over again, and Cam Newton getting beat up. They like on random articles on our Facebook page, like, fix the offensive line. What are you doing? And even though it has nothing to do with the offensive line, they've just become obsessed with it. Understandably, I guess, but the offensive line was actually pretty good last year. Paradis, he bounced back. He had a rough 2019, but I think he was still recovering from the broken fibula that he had the year before. Understandably, it took a while to come back from. Yeah, I think you can bring both those guys back, and it'd be reasonable to do so. I think continuity is the big thing. Like that's huge for an offensive line. And just over the years, they've had so much turnover there. Like if you can bring back the same 5 guys and it wasn't a bad line, why wouldn't you?
All right. By the way, special teams, before we move over to defense, seem to improve a little bit. It still has to work. But Farrell Cooper, that was a disappointment. Is that a Farrell Cooper thing, or is that just the special teams, the guys that were blocking in front of him just didn't do the job?
It's hard to say. He started out promising, but just kind of he tailed off, and then they tried other guys. The return game has been a problem for a long time there. I don't know about Chase Blackburn as a special teams coordinator. He was the only coach that they carried over from Ron Rivera's staff, which I thought was bizarre. I think they were ranked like dead last in the special team, like Gosselin's big special teams thing last year. So I didn't understand bringing him back, but they did improve. Like there was nowhere to go but up, but they did improve on special teams for sure. Joey Sly didn't have a great year, but like I still think he's very young, and his just range is insane. Like he just barely missed a 65-yard field goal. Like he had some up and downs, but like you don't see range like that very often. So like
it's
I
not
think
fair,
you give him another,
because it was amazing watching, especially if you weren't watching a full game. I mean, maybe I'm watching another game and I move over. Oh, let's see what's going on. There were so many games that I would turn the Panther game on, like in the last half of the fourth quarter, and of course this was a big deal. And I know that, as you mentioned earlier, with Rule, because he kind of gave Bridgewater a dig regarding not being able to close the deal a lot. But that's what it was. It was like Bridgewater unable to get the team in the end zone on like 5 or 6 drives, stalling for these 50, 60-yard field goals almost every time. And Sly, after having such a great year the previous year when he hit 8 of 11 from 50 plus, was just 1 of 6 from 50 plus last season.
Yeah, it's just that's high variance. When you're over 50, it's going to be, it's going to go up and down. I just think he wasn't put in very good positions this year. Like, yes, 1 second left,
Yeah.
56 yards.
Yeah.
Like, okay, go out and win the game for
Yes.
us. Like, it's hard to pin that on the kicker. I thought it was unfair, the criticism that he got. He didn't have a great year, but you have to consider the context. I think you definitely bring him back and bank on his potential and his power. And the punter, Joseph Charlton, was great too for a rookie. Just like he was terrible. Like in the offseason, I was like, what's going to happen with this guy? He was booting punts over the wall in training camp. But like once the games began, he was right on. He was an excellent punter. So I think you've got a pretty strong core there.
Okay.
If you can figure out if you can get a returner, I don't know what the answer is. That's been a problem for a while too.
Might have to be a combination receiver returner at some point. That could definitely fill 2 spots that are definitely needed for this team offensively. But when we switch over to defense, unlike the offensive line where they were able to bring their sack totals down, unfortunately the sack totals went down on defense as well. They went from 53 to 29. That's what happens when you lose Addison, Irvin, Butler, and McCoy to free agency. They combined for 29 sacks in 2019. And that was the exact number the Panthers had all of last year. You mentioned Brian Burns, though. He's got superstar written all over him. But other than that, you got Short's gone now. Weatherly's gone. So what's up with the rest of the defensive line?
I actually like the defensive line. I know the numbers were bad, and particularly early in the season, the pass rush was just non-existent. They couldn't get any pressure, but it slowly got better with time, like starting week 3 against the Chargers. And then by the end of the year, you really saw the improvement. The Packers game, I think, was the best example. Like, they were on Aaron Rodgers. They were all over him. I think he had his worst game outside of the Tampa game where they just got totally blown out because he was getting hit constantly by that front seven. They had great pressure on him. They had good coverage on the back end. But yeah, the pass rush really improved as the year went on. Derek Brown developed. He wasn't getting anything early. He had 2 sacks in the Green Bay game. But the pressures were there. That's the kind of thing, like sacks are going to go up and down by, it's hard to judge based too much just on sacks, but the pressure rate was decent overall and it got better. That was the thing. The thing that I'm most looking forward to is Yetur Gross-Matos. Like, he missed a lot of time as a rookie. He was kind of in and out of the lineup. He got poked in the eye and got a concussion. I think he may have been out COVID for a while. But like once he got into the lineup, you saw, oh, okay, like there's some actual real potential there. So I think the defensive line is actually the strongest part of the defense, and it's only going to get better. Derek Brown came on really strong late in the season. Brian Burns is obviously going to be very special for a long time. I think if you add like one more guy there, most fans would say, you don't need another defensive lineman. Well, tell that to Tampa. They loaded up, and look what they did to Patrick Mahomes. I think it would have been nice to get J.J. Watt. They probably couldn't afford him anyway. He's gone to Arizona now. But I wouldn't mind at all like signing another defensive lineman or using like a maybe 3rd round or 4th rounder on another pass rusher. I just think that's like same thing as receiver. You can never have too many pass rushers.
When you especially when you're running a 4-3. Is that what they're running, or are they running more like a 4-2-5?
They mix it up a lot, but it was mostly 4-3, I think. They were able to get pressure without too much blitzing. I think that was the big thing later in the year. They just early on they couldn't get pressure with 4, and that's going to kill you. That's going to kill your defense, especially when you don't have a lot of talent on the back end. But it did really improve a lot in the second half of the season, so I'm more bullish on that unit going forward for sure.
Well, Shaq Thompson played almost every snap on defense, which is just incredibly high number for that type of scheme. But still, he just his career high tackles just keep going up every year. But whether or not he's a guy that's going to make plays for you, I'm not so sure we've seen enough of those. Whitehead's a free agent, but and he's just a player. Carter hasn't really seemed to develop. His production's gone down. His snaps have gone down. But Jeremy Chin was just a revelation. What a season for Jeremy Chin, and they used Burris, Chin, and Boston an awful lot.
Yeah, they did some 3 safety looks. I'd like to see more of that in the future. Like you saw at Tampa in the Super Bowl, they did that very effectively. Blanking on Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, he did some of that at Baylor when their last stop. So I'd like to see more of that going forward. But yes, Jeremy Chin was kind of the piece that put it all together. He's the reason why the defense was better than we thought it was going to be. His range is just insane. Like he's almost free safety like in that respect. His coverage isn't there yet. His speed isn't quite what he's not Earl Thomas, but just incredible range and more polished than a rookie has any right to be. And he cleaned up a lot of mistakes. There were just people missing tackles and missed assignments and everything, and Chin just cleaned up a lot of things. So if you took him out of that equation, then maybe it would have been the worst defense in the league last year. And he really improved the whole thing. It sounds like they're going to move him to safety. He's more of a strong safety type. I wouldn't try to put him at free safety right now. I didn't agree with releasing Trey Boston, honestly. He didn't have a very good year, yes, but there's really no ready-made answer on the roster. Like you don't have, we'll just plug in that guy at free safety. Like they don't have one. And they only saved like $3.5 million in the cap when you cut him anyway. So I didn't understand that move. I like most of the moves that Fitterer's made so far. That was not one of them. So I think they've got to draft somebody or sign somebody. Earl Thomas would be amazing, of course. But the list is, I don't know, maybe there are a lot of good free safeties out there in free agency, and it's supposed to be a good safety class. So maybe they do know what they're doing there. Maybe they think they can get an upgrade. But if you don't, then you've got a problem. Like you can't have a whole free safety and middle linebacker and cornerback. Like that's just like one too many. In my opinion.
Okay.
But Dante Jackson also had a great
Yes.
year. He was another reason. He wasn't even 100%. He was affected by a toe injury all year. He got hurt week 1, and they made him play through it for like 2 months, and he wasn't 100%, but he still did really good. They finally sat him, and he was able to recover and come back at the end of the year and played really well. I was impressed with him very much so.
Douglas and Elder, the two unrestricted free agent corners. What's the deal there?
I liked what Elder did, and I thought he tackled at a really good rate for a slot guy for his size. He was very tenacious. Like he got his face in there and he made a lot of stops. His coverage was pretty good too, so I'd love to see them bring him back. That was one of the nice surprises what Corn Elder did in the slot. So I think you can bring him back, and he wouldn't break the bank either. Douglas, he started out really well. Like he was very promising. Like, oh, look, they signed this guy a week before the season started, and you got a great, now you have 2 solid starting cornerbacks. But he just really dived off in the second half of the season. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was hurt or if it was mental. Like the Kansas City game just basically broke him. Like he just got totally turned around. Anytime Tyreek Hill was in his vicinity, it was just like his brain broke. I don't know what happened there. So I don't think they're going to bring him back. I think you need to draft a cornerback early. Second round, third round at the absolute latest. They really need to make an investment at cornerback this year.
Yeah, because Pride didn't play well either.
No, he did not.
Yeah, and that's a big issue. You have one guy that may not be back, another guy that didn't play well, so it does look like outside cornerback spot. And that's why when you only have 6 draft picks, there's even though we talk about, all right, well, maybe the Panthers trade up to get a quarterback. Well, that means you got to trade draft picks, and you only have 6. This is a team that could use more draft picks. So that's going to be the interesting thing, is following whether or not they could find a way to get a hold of, I don't know. I mean, that's why when we talked about early with Gardner Minshew, it just makes a little bit more sense that you just, maybe you just go with a guy like Minshew. He's not going to cost you much. And then you can sit at 8 and hopefully you get a good quarterback. And if not, then, maybe trade down and try to get your franchise quarterback next year and give Gardner Minshew a chance. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting because it's a tough situation to be in for a team that doesn't have a lot of draft capital and that really wants to find their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think they need to trade down. Like, I don't know what the magic spot is, but I guess Matt Rule is a proponent of this. The Athletic reported at some point in the offseason, like, he wanted to trade down last year from number 7,
Okay.
but I guess Hurney was just in love with Derek Brown. He was going to take Derek Brown no matter what, if he was there. But I guess Rule wanted to trade down. He knew that they needed more picks to address some of these holes. Like, if you're the Chiefs, like, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can take a running back in the first round, but if you've got holes at corner and free safety and left tackle and middle linebacker and tight end, like, you need to add more picks at some point. So I think that would be the way to go. Maybe the second round you start trading back and just compiling as many picks as you can. You're not going to catch up with like Miami or Jacksonville, but they really need to find a way to add. Like, if they can get like 8, 9, 10 picks, that would help a lot.
All right, give me a prediction as far as if the Panthers make a bold move or just, a significant move as far as trades, free agent deal. Give me a name.
Oh, Deshaun Watson is a good name.
It would be. What do you think that would cost the Panthers, though? Because I keep, as a Jet fan, and we talk Dolphins.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. Well, we talk Dolphins football as well on this program and on this network. And it's just obvious that if Houston does want to trade Deshaun Watson, they say they don't, but they're going to have to, that it's the Dolphins and the Jets just have more to give. So it's okay. Yeah. Let them two fight it out. Who wants to give more first rounders? Because both teams have they have so many first rounders that, it just makes too much sense. But if they make a deal with Carolina, that tells me that the Jets and Dolphins don't want Watson as bad as Carolina does. And if Carolina has to get into the mix, maybe they can, maybe it's, and they only have to give up, say, a couple of first round draft picks. Because I think if the Dolphins and Jets get involved, they may have to give up a lot more. Then Absolutely. Maybe it benefits the Panthers if for some reason the Jets and Dolphins say, no, we're not going to give you all these number ones. We're just not going to do it. Then maybe the Panthers, maybe it's a break for the Panthers and they don't have to wind up giving stuff that they don't have.
Yeah, if the Jets and Dolphins are serious about getting in, they can't compete with them. Like, the Dolphins have 4 picks in the top 50. They have a 22-year-old quarterback who's a top 5 pick last year. The Jets also have a decent starting quarterback they can trade away. They just have too many more pieces. They can't compete with those guys. So you may have to give up the farm. Like, if you're going to compete with them, maybe it takes 4 first-round picks. Like, nobody's mentioned that number yet, but I honestly think that's probably a more realistic. Like, we keep hearing, 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson and 2 defensive starters. That's crazy. You can't possibly. I'm like, of course they can get that back. And they can get more, probably. They can get 4 first-round picks or some combination of 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, Brian Burns and Jeremy Chin. They can just like take you to the cleaners if you're really determined, which it sounds like they are. It sounds like Tepper, he's had enough of. He bought the team 3 years ago. He had an injured Cam Newton, and then he had Kyle Allen, not very good. And then you had Teddy Bridgewater, who turned out to be inconsistent, I think is the best word for how he was. He's understandably frustrated. And coming from an area where, he's a billionaire, he's had success taking on distressed assets. Like, that's what Deshaun Watson is. That he's going to get traded. Like, the Houston, they're slow learners, but they'll find out of it. He's not going to play for you again. So you need to trade him. You need to see what you can get because he will sit out the entire season. Understandably, look what they've done to him. They just blown up this team. Yep. They got nothing back for Watt. They got almost nothing back for Hopkins. They released Duke Johnson the other day. They gave up like a second rounder for him. They just have no clue what they're doing. So of course he wants out. So I honestly think they will try to make it happen. I don't know what the timeline is. That's really the problem. Like, The Texans may not realize they need to trade him until July.
Well, they better
by then
you
don't. Yeah, because you don't have any other options.
None of these teams are waiting probably past the first week of April. They're like, look, this is our deal. You want it because we're not playing. Don't think you're playing hardball with us because we have to worry about our own quarterback situation, our own draft. And I'm sure those teams will give Houston a deadline and say, look, this is not a negotiation deadline. This is a real deadline. If you don't want to make a deal with us by this deadline, then you just are not interested and we'll move on.
Yeah. That's really the key. You have to set a hard deadline. Say, okay, if it's not happening by the draft, we're gonna go a different direction. You
Yes.
can't wait for Houston to get their act
No.
together. You just can't. As much as you may want Deshaun Watson, you can't break your entire organization over trying to get one player. Like I'm fully in favor of selling the farm for him, but only up to a certain time
Yep.
frame. Like you can't sacrifice next season hoping to get him.
But from what I'm hearing, you're making it sound though like there is a real good possibility that, again, like I said, let's say the Jets and Dolphins do not want to get into this just ridiculous bidding war, and then the price has to then go down a little bit, and the Panthers are coming into town. You're telling me that you really believe that ownership, whether it's Watson, it could be Russell Wilson, but a big enough splash where ownership is like, I'm willing to give some really big time assets, whether it's premium draft picks, maybe a premium player or two, because I got to get a franchise quarterback in here.
Yeah, that seems to be the direction it's going. And you use the exact word. They say Tepper wants to make a big splash. Like he's tired of losing. It's been they were like 7-9 his first year. They've been 5-11 2 years in a row. Like he's pissed. He's ready to make a real move to upgrade at this position and do whatever it takes.
Okay.
So that would be my guess. Like I think it would be much smarter. Just like you can give up so much less to get a guy like Minshew. It doesn't have to be Minshew.
Sure.
Sam Darnold is also worth considering for some of the same reasons. I don't think his ceiling is as high as Minshew, but also definitely worth considering for some of the same reasons. But yeah, I think they're going to trade for a quarterback in the next few weeks here. I don't know if they're going to wait for the draft. I get the impression that they're kind of in panic mode and they're ready to make a move.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, whether it's the Jets, the Dolphins, the Panthers, none of these teams can wait past the first week or two of April. They just can't. They have to, because even if it's not because if they know it's not going to be, all right, I'm not going to get Deshaun Watson, and I have to make sure I have a plan for the draft, especially the Dolphins and the Jets, who do have those two young quarterbacks, or the Jets. I know there's been a lot of talk of the Jets trading Sam Darnold. So they'd have to know, okay, well, does that mean we keep Sam Darnold? Or does that mean, no, we're still going to trade Sam Darnold now. We're not going to get Watson, but we'll trade him, we'll get an asset, and we'll use the second pick to get a quarterback. So this will get done no later than I think the first week of April. And I think if it doesn't get done by time it's a week before the draft or a few days before the draft, I'd be shocked that we hear about some blockbuster Deshaun Watson deal days before the draft or on draft day. I just don't see it.
Yeah. It'll happen in the next month, or it's not going to happen at all. For sure.
All right. Well, I'm sure the Panther fans will be real excited if they can get a hold of one of those quarterbacks. There's no question about that. And let's also hope that if Deshaun Watson does become a Carolina Panther next season, that most of the fans will be there to see it. So because sooner or later the fans have got to be back, or this salary cap won't be will be the least of the NFL's troubles. So
yeah,
got to get fans in the stands. Tim, tell us a little bit about Panthers Wire. What else do you have available for Panther fans out there?
You can find us on Twitter at The Panthers Wire and websites pantherswire.usatoday.com. Right now, we're just hitting free agency as hard as we can. We've run through 2 or 3 options at every position. I just talked about Jameis Winston yesterday. That's another name that hasn't really been discussed. I think he'd be interesting. Yes, he has an interception problem. That's not hardly a state secret. But if you can get him to calm down a little bit, like he just has incredible arm talent. And he was in New Orleans for a year now. He knows that scheme. He knows what they're trying to do with Joe Brady. So I really think that's kind of like a low-key interesting possibility. And they have money now. Like for the last several years, the line from them has been, well, we don't really have the money. We're not going to make any splash moves. But you have the money now. You can go out and either, obviously if you trade for a quarterback, that's going to take up a lot of your cap space. But you can sign a couple of guys. You can make a splash move like Trent Williams. That would be great. But I don't know if you can afford $20 million on a left tackle. But they can go out and sign a few guys. The free agency is my focus right now, and obviously we're going to be talking about the draft for weeks and weeks. We just did a long list over the weekend, about 40 prospects that they could take on day 2. They're just kind of in a really interesting spot at number 39, the second round. You have guys who might fall down who are first-round talents. That's also a good spot to trade down from if you don't like what you see So just a lot of different ways that can go in there. So we'll be hitting the draft really hard too.
All right, Tim. Well, if there is a blockbuster trade of Deshaun Watson proportions, we'll definitely want to have you back here to talk about it. So maybe we'll get an opportunity in some way between now and the draft to have you on again and talk some more Panthers football. So we appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.